Welcome to another episode of the Louisiana Restaurant Association's We Live to Eat podcast. I'm your host, Wendy Warren, and today we're getting into a really important topic for all you seafood lovers and restaurant owners out there. Louisiana seafood laws and how they impact what's on your plate. But before we dive in, I'm excited to introduce my co-host today, Will DuBos. Will is the Senior Director of Government Affairs here at the LRA and our in-house expert on all things regulatory. Will, thank you for being here.
Hey, Wendy, I'm very happy to be here talking about a subject that I love talking about.
Oh, yes, you talk quite a bit about it.
Whether I want to or not.
I often give you gifts in the theme of this subject.
Yes, I have my shrimp pillow. I think I've given my fiance some shrimp earrings
Yes.
that you've donated. So yeah, we're shrimpy.
All right, let's kick off things with a little fun. And we love to talk about food around here, so obviously. First question, what's your favorite PoBoy?
So growing up, this was always very tough for me. Thankfully, that issue has been solved. So my go-to is the Parkway Bakery Surf and Turf. I get the best of both worlds. I get a little fried shrimp, I get a little roast beef debris, all in one sandwich, and it pretty much knocks me out for the rest of the day. It's amazing.
Well, mine is the barbecue shrimp po' boy at Louisiana by the track.
Another great one.
Last meal for me, and some sweet potato fries. Oh, heaven. So I figured you'd be a shrimp guy, though.
I love it. Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm always, it's pretty much, every other meal is shrimp for me.
So what about dinner? What's on the plate for you? You always order seafood, right?
Definitely. I mean, I always look to see what our fresh seafood options are at any, the specials of the night. That's just my go-to.
Yeah. I remember you said you went to dinner with your fiance and she ordered the fish and you out of the ordinary ordered like a chicken dish and you were like, what was I thinking?
Yes.
And you just wanted to eat.
Although I'll say I do often have order envy of her. Yeah. She always orders correctly, and then I try to get adventurous and I'm like, you know what? Why didn't I just get the red snapper? It's my favorite.
So speaking of Louisiana seafood, here's one for you. And most people, this is my true test if you're like in it to win it with the Louisiana seafood. Can you name the 6 main species that our state is known for?
But of course, it's like the old song, head, shoulders, knees, and toes. It's shrimp, oysters, crabs, and crawfish. And then you've got, of course, redfish and catfish, which is the finfish. And, of course, alligator.
Yeah, those are the big 6. And, I often wonder, what about the little old turtle? How does he fit in?
It's confusing because he's got 4 legs. It's almost like he's not seafood.
Yeah, I don't know. He doesn't have a turtle board behind him in Louisiana.
Yeah, fortunately for us, for me at least, he's not regulated as much, so I don't have to think about him very often.
This is Lieutenant Governor Billy Nungesser. Satisfy your cravings with world-famous Louisiana seafood. All the flavors you love, prepared by our world-famous chefs, and fresh from our bountiful waters to your plate. So head over to your local favorite restaurant and be sure to ask for authentic Louisiana seafood. Brought to you by the Louisiana Restaurant Association and Louisiana Seafood Board. A perfect pair.
Louisiana seafood really is the pride of our state, and it is the center of so many plates here in our restaurants. And that's why we're talking about the subject today, because we really want restaurants to follow the rules, be compliant when it comes to labeling seafood products. So Will's here. He's going to break down everything we need to know about the Louisiana seafood labeling laws, how to stay compliant, and why it's crucial for both the industry and consumers.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. I mean, as you said, these laws are crucial for 2 main reasons. I mean, number 1, they help protect our local seafood industry, and 2, they ensure consumers know exactly what they're getting on their plate when they dine out. Louisiana shrimp and crawfish are among the best in the world, but there's also a lot of imported seafood on the market, and it's important for diners to have clarity about where their food is coming from.
Certainly.
So starting January 1st of 2025, a new law takes effect that'll require restaurants to include a very specific phrase on their menus if they serve imported shrimp or crawfish. Their menu, again, starting January 1st, 2025, will need to say, some items served at this establishment may contain imported crawfish or shrimp. Ask for more information. That's the phrase. This notice must be visible on all menus or near menu boards if table service isn't offered.
Well, that seems pretty straightforward, but what happens if a restaurant doesn't include this labeling?
Yeah, so the penalties can start to add up pretty quickly. Restaurants that fail to follow this new labeling requirement could face significant fines, and those fines will increase with repeated violations. So it's not just about putting a statement on the menu, it's also about training staff to know where the seafood is sourced. Because if a customer asks whether the shrimp or crawfish is local or imported, the staff have to give the correct answer.
Right. But let's back up a moment and talk about availability. The may contain language covers the fact that shrimp and crawfish are seasonal.
Exactly.
And our customers don't always get that. But some folks use the term Louisiana in a marketing sense. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I look at it this way. A visitor to New Orleans or to Louisiana in August wants the same thing that they can have in November. So, you just got to be very careful about how you label it and what you decide to include on your menu. The penalties, just if you don't, they can add up. So just be careful with what you include on your menu.
Well, and if you've grocery shopped for crawfish specifically, I know I have seen it. The packaging looks like it's from Louisiana, but when you turn it over, it's definitely imported product. But what about inspections? Like, who's keeping track of all of this? Long time ago, I would have thought Wildlife and Fisheries, but now it's the LDH, Louisiana Department of Health, is ensuring compliance on this, right?
Yeah, so it can be a bit confusing. Wildlife and Fisheries does still have some regulatory authority, but only as it pertains to catfish. LDH, however, is a bit broader, and they specifically also regulate shrimp and crawfish. So they conduct routine inspections, as you know, and one of the things they're looking for now is proper seafood labeling. So if your menu misrepresents where your seafood comes from, that's considered a critical violation. And as with any critical violation, whether it's improper storage temperatures or contamination issues, the fines can be steep. Plus, repeated violations could lead to even harsher penalties like closure if it's not corrected. So it's really important for restaurants to stay on top of compliance and correct issues as they come up.
Let's talk about packaging. I've heard there are some concerns about misleading packaging of imported seafood.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, whether it's intentional or not, some businesses mislabel their products, and this is especially true when dealing with seafood. It can be as subtle as using terms like Gulf without specifying which Gulf you're talking about. People want you to assume it's the Gulf of Mexico when actually it's the Gulf of India. So you just got to be really careful about sourcing your product, your seafood products.
And even this week, my gosh, the Federal Trade Commission is also keeping track of how seafood is marketed.
Yeah.
Terms like local, sustainable, and wild caught are being thrown around in this seafood conversation that we're having too, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. The FTC, they have guidelines to prevent deceptive marketing practices, and restaurants need to be careful with how they use terms. For instance, you can't call farm-raised seafood wild caught. If you're claiming your seafood is local, it needs to be local. And another one that we hear often is sustainable. You can only use sustainable if your seafood meets recognized sustainability criteria. misusing these terms, not only risks fines, but can damage your brand's credibility.
Right. One of the things that I think of when I think of wild caught on a menu is the Des Allemands catfish. And I'm always really excited when I see that because it's from a very specific area. It is hyper local, if I had to use that term. And I know that Spars down the bayou, that's what they pride themselves on, is using that Des Allemands catfish product.
Yes, indeed. And I will say this, it can be a pitfall, though, if you're going to get that specific,
right,
you better be dang sure that that's the exact product that you're serving.
For sure.
Not just anybody can make the perfect Sazerac. And not just anybody can offer Louisiana's hospitality industry the perfect workers' comp coverage. The Louisiana Restaurant Association's SIF team knows what hospitality businesses need. We truly care about your team's safety and your success. Everybody who's anybody goes with LRA Workers' Comp. Ask around. In this business, word of mouth is everything.
So while we're on the topic of fish, let's talk about fish species. I know there's been some confusion with things like catfish specifically.
Yeah, there has been. One of the common issues that we see is with catfish when you bring in other species that are very similar, like swai or bassa, which are great tasting fish, but you got to be careful because only catfish that's indigenous and caught and or raised in the United States can be labeled as catfish on a menu. So swai and bassa, similar, not a bad tasting fish whatsoever, but can't be labeled as catfish.
Right.
You can just, and a way to get around that is simply call it fish. If you're going to serve a swai or bassa sandwich, just call it a fish sandwich.
Yeah.
It just can't be catfish.
Right. Indeed. Mislabeling, my goodness. They're going to get you going and coming. Both state and federal. All eyes in the crosshair on seafood products. So farm raised versus wild caught, we talked about. It sounds like staying compliant really comes down to transparency. Like that's the long and short of it, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, transparency is everything. Whether it's seafood on your menu, packaging, marketing materials, being honest and clear is the best way to build trust with your customers, stay compliant with the law. It's the rule of thumb, right?
Right.
And also one of the things I want to continue to mention and kind of hammer home the point is to train your staff on these issues because, while it may be second nature to you and a no-brainer to you as the restaurant owner or to your managers, the questions more than likely are going to be asked to the server. And if the server has no idea, they may accidentally say, "Oh yeah, it's local, it's local shrimp, it's local, or it's just catfish," But that's where you could start to get into some trouble. So be sure to really train your staff on these new issues and just be aware about it, and that's how you're going to stay out of trouble.
Well, and one of the things that we pride ourselves here on at the Louisiana Restaurant Association is if you have any questions, pick up the phone and call us.
Yes, please.
If we by chance don't have the answer, we will run it down, we will bird dog it and get it for you, and then we'll tell the others.
Yeah.
That's what we're really good at. Like if see something, say something, and if we hear about a scam or hear about something amiss in the industry, we're gonna package that content and you'll see it in your next e-newsletter or on your next podcast episode.
The last thing we want is one of our members ending up in the news or something for a mistake that could have just been easily caught and fixed. So
exactly.
Please call us.
Yes. So that wraps up this episode of the We Live to Eat podcast. You've been entertained and educated, hopefully, by Will and Wendy. So thanks for sharing your insights with us, Will. It is super important. If anyone out there questions the dedication of this association in this space, they only need to see Will during the legislative session.
Running like a chicken with my head cut off. That's how I like to describe myself.
Yes, indeed. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back soon with another episode of the We Live to Eat podcast.